Okay, everybody, welcome back this afternoon. Welcome back from lunch and a little trip around campus. We're going to kick things off this afternoon with a policy update from our two policy specialists, Kshema and Sandy. They're going to talk us through general policy things ranging from pre-existing policies to touch on policy 2.0. So, ladies, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me clearly? Great.
A little higher, a little higher.
Now? Yeah, is that better?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, I'm Kshema Divakar, and I'm a policy specialist, and I work predominantly on the AdWords side. Sandy is the policy specialist and works on the shopping side of policies, and what we're hoping to cover today over the course of the next 30 minutes are a few, some of the recent updates and also what you can watch out for in the future. All right, so that's just, and this will be a two-part session. So the first part we'll cover some of the updates on the AdWords side. The next part will be the shopping policy update, and at the end of it, we'll take any questions you have. If we don't have the type of questions, what we'll do is we'll be hanging around down there. So feel free to get hold of us and get your questions answered. All right, so policy, the new policy center. Most of you have probably already seen this. This was launched sometime in mid-September. And essentially with this policy change, what we hope to do is make things more simple, transparent, and make impact more understandable. So what you'll see is that from what we had previously, we had about close to 100 policies. Now it's down to 16 policies. Any guesses on what that number below is, the last number?
Words?
Yes, it was like 166,000 words, but now we're down to just about 20,000 words on the policy page. And essentially with that, we're hoping it's easier and more simple for a user or an advertiser to kind of navigate around the policy center and absorb what's going on there. This is what the new policy center looks like. As you can see, we have 4 primary pillars. So we have prohibited content, which is essentially content that cannot be advertised on the Google network. We have prohibited practices, which is essentially things that an advertiser needs to stay away from if they're going to be promoting something on the Google network. There's restricted content. Restricted content has always existed. This is just products that can be promoted, but with a few restrictions around how and where and all of that. And finally, there's editorial and technical. By that, we just mean the quality and the look and the feel of the ad and the landing page. This is just an example of what we mean by being more transparent about our policies. In the old world, we used to have a list of things that we wouldn't allow without much explanation on why we had a particular stance or why something fell under the scope of that policy. So what we've done with this change is be more open about what we consider compliant. So with the dangerous products or services policy, which currently falls under the prohibited content pillar, we say that we want to help keep people safe both online and offline. So we don't allow the promotion of some products or services that cause damage, harm, or injury. So that's essentially explaining the policy rationale. And what you see below are a few examples of what would fall within the scope of that policy. So here again, it's not an exhaustive list. It's an explanation and a few examples to help an advertiser or a user understand what falls within that scope. This is an example of what we mean by more an advertiser is able to probably gauge impact better with something like this. So if an advertiser were advertising airsoft guns and will be non-compliant and will be taken to the policy page or the policy resource center, which will then tell them that the disapproved reason or the reason for suspension is guns and parts. So the next thing for an advertiser to do is to be able to kind of read through those bullet points that you see there. So what is it that we don't allow under guns and parts? The first piece says functional devices that appear to discharge a projectile at high velocity, whether for sport, self-defense, or combat. So we see airsoft guns fall under this particular category, and that's why this is considered non-compliant. What if an advertiser were promoting something like gun scopes? That doesn't fall under that category, so they move on to the next one, and they see that any part or component that's necessary to the function of a gun or intended for attachment to a gun, that is also considered non-compliant. So if it's gun scopes, then it would fall under that category, and it becomes easier for an advertiser to understand exactly what's non-compliant about that particular creative. That was an overview of the new policy center. What I'm hoping to do with this particular slide is kind of walk you through some of the policies that we get asked most about during the holiday season. Hopefully with this update, you'll be able to answer some of the questions that you see on the forums or you get from your advertisers. And hopefully, if this happens in advance, then advertisers don't need to run into these issues at all. Right, so to start off with, under editorial and professional standards, we have unclear promotions and usefulness. There are two big issues. Again, editorial and professional standards, essentially we want ads to be engaging, but we don't want it to be annoying to users. So what do we mean by unclear promotions? As the name suggests, anything that's being promoted in the ad, it needs to be evident to a user what the product or service is that's being promoted in the ad. If it is a blurry image ad, then that actually will fall under, that will be non-compliant for something that's unclear promotions. Similarly, a user needs to know where they'll be led if they were to actually click on the ad. So there cannot be a mismatch between this and the destination domain. Moving on to usefulness. Essentially with this, we're saying it needs to be easy and useful for a user to be able to navigate through the site and to interact with the ad. So if a back button is not working, or if the user needs to install an additional piece of software in order to have the landing page render, all of that would be a violation under our usefulness policy. Moving on to abuse of the ad network. Now, this is something that falls under our prohibited practices pillar. If you guys want to fire up your laptops and take a look at the new policy center as we're speaking about it, feel free to do so. So, abuse of the ad network, essentially with this policy, we want to make sure anything that's available on the network is actually providing a useful experience, a diverse experience, and a safe experience for our users. And when we deem something as being non-compliant with our policy on low-value content, what we're saying is users are probably not getting that kind of a unique experience while being on this particular site. That could be anything from a site existing solely for the purpose of driving traffic to another website, or a site having content that's not original and having duplicative content that's found on other websites. What we also see a lot of is sites that are simply there in order to kind of promote more advertising on their site. So all of this falls under what we now call low-value content. Finally, under misleading misrepresentation of self-product or service, this again falls under prohibited practices. And here, essentially, we're saying anything that's promoted in the ad, it needs to be upfront, and it needs to be an honest disclosure of what's being promoted or being sold to a particular user. So any decision that the user makes needs to be a fully informed decision. So if there's going to be a promotion or a promotion of a software download, then all of that information needs to be presented upfront. The software download needs to be user initiated, and the user knows what they're actually getting into. Unavailable promotions, as the name suggests, is when that promotion is not available. So a lot of times, especially in the shopping season, maybe there's products that are being promoted in the ad, but are no longer available on the site, or discounts that are constantly running out. So just make sure that all of this is actually, advertisers need to make sure that all of this is actually up to date. And anything that's promised in the ad is actually available on the site. Even if it is a particular call to action, that call to action needs to be achievable on the site. And finally, we have misleading promotions, which is when advertisers try to entice users to buy their product or engage in the service by being extreme or exaggerating the kind of results that one will get by buying that product. That again is something that we don't consider compliant. one thing you may have noticed is that a lot of these policies, things that we're looking at right now, have always existed. We've always looked at something like this in the past as well. But what has really changed is how we're actually defining some of these and how we're explaining why we're taking a particular action and why we think it's not safe for a user to be able to engage in these ads. That said, one of the policies that we're currently reviewing, and this is a policy that has been around for a long time, is our healthcare and medicines policy. We see that this is a growing industry. There's a whole bunch of new business models, and there's a whole bunch of products that are being launched on a daily basis. We're extremely diligent with the way we enforce in this space. We're reviewing this policy to make sure that we're going to continue to be as diligent. If there is going to be, there's no change guaranteed yet, but if there is going to be a change, you will see that there will be an update on the policy change log. The policy change log is accessible through the policy center. A lot of you probably follow it already. If you don't, I encourage you to go take a look at it. We'll post this link on the forum, once we're done with the presentation. So that change log essentially has a list of all of the policies that have changed in the past and also any upcoming launches. So should the healthcare and medicines policy change, you will see an announcement and a detailed log of what's going to be changing. Finally, if you do notice an ad that you think is not in compliance with our policies, it is our team's priority to make sure that all of, one, we're ensuring a really safe experience when it comes to the ad ecosystem, and two, we're enforcing consistently anytime we see a bad ad. So if you think that there is a particular ad that's bypassed our systems in some fashion, please make sure to report that ad. It will come to one of our teams at Google, and we'll take the necessary action. Next up, we have Sandy to kind of walk us through the shopping policies. Thanks.
Hi guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So thanks for having me. I was asked to come here because there were a lot of questions that came up when it was posed on the contributor forum around shopping. So shopping season is coming, Q4. Just similar to what Kshema pointed out, I wanted to talk about a few seasonal trends that we see on the enforcement side that come around this time of year. So firstly, landing page content. So we see a lot of price and availability mismatches, especially during holiday season, because there are a lot of flash sales, changing prices that can, many times a day. So for merchants who are uploading feeds to Merchant Center, just make sure that they are in alignment with what is on their landing page. We do still enforce as normal during this time of year, so please watch out for that. One of the key requirements to having good data quality, as we call it, is match between what is advertised in the feed, similar to text ads, and what is on the landing page itself. So we look at things like, is it the same product that's being advertised? Is the price accurate? Is it available? Is it being offered to me in the right language, the right currency, a lot of these different things. So most of the attributes that are submitted into the feed, we want to see the same thing reflected on the landing page. So also for holiday season, this applies to shipping as well. A lot of sort of next day air ship, get your presents by X date. Please make sure that shipping tables are also updated and in alignment with what is on the site. We recently updated our beginner's guide, I think just about a week and a half ago on the External Help Center. We added a few extra tips and tricks on how to make sure that a merchant is compliant when setting up. So we got a lot of feedback that, after a merchant sets up their Merchant Center account, then they get dinged for some kind of policy or some kind of enforcement. Could we put more information up front? So that's exactly what we did on the beginner's guide. It's in a couple different places, but under set up your account, there's a whole section at the bottom of the page to help merchants through that process. Great. And similar to what Kshema was saying, shopping was a little bit behind in launching a policy change log. We did this over the summer. So you will see a very similar thing of upcoming policy changes and recent changes. So one example that I pulled out was our new policy on dangerous content. It was the post on the changelog was posted in June, and the actual policy launched in September. And now we're exactly aligned with the ad side of things. So we're trying, while shopping is a different product, we do want to try and remain very aligned and consistent across our policies. So as AdWords is updating their policies, we're looking at the same thing as well. Great, so that was just a short one. We have some time for Q&A.